Welcome to another 21 Hats Dashboard. I'm Lauren Feldman, and I'm here with Ami Kassar, who is founder and CEO of MultiFunding. Ami's an all-around expert on small business finance who has been a guest here many times. Welcome back, Ami.
Lauren, always a pleasure to be with you, my friend.
Ami, there's a lot going on right now, so much, in fact, that it would be impossible to keep up with all of it. One of the storylines that I fear can get lost for business owners amid all the confusion surrounding tariffs and immigration and DOGE and everything else that's happening is the Small Business Administration, which happens to be an agency that you work with and track all the time. We've heard about mass layoffs, offices closing around the country, and even the possibility that maybe the agency would be shuttered. Do you know what's going on?
No.
I was afraid of that.
But I don't know what's going on, Lauren, but I have this general attitude, which maybe I learned in COVID, I don't know, but doing lots of chaos just to try to stay calm and focused on what you can control. So funnily enough, I'm more worried right now than anything else that the government won't be able to agree to fund itself in the next 10 days or so. And that could be the biggest disruption of all. And
you're talking about a possible government shutdown.
So that's, to be honest, the biggest thing I'm worried about right now, although it's not much help worrying can do about something that you can't control. So we are rushing to get anyone who's got a loan in process now should make sure their borrower has their loan has a number with the SBA already, so that should it shut down, the loan can still close. So that is my biggest worry at the moment. Hopefully they'll come to some agreement and accommodation, although it's hard to know who's agreeing with anybody in Washington these days.
All right. So even though you don't have eyes inside DOGE or inside the SBA to tell us what's going on there, there are a number of issues, some of which you've written about in your 21 Hats column, that I think are worth discussing. One criticism you're hearing of the SBA these days, and possibly as an excuse to rein it in, is that there's been way too much fraud in SBA lending. And then there has been, a lot of that's related to COVID. You wrote recently about the difference between fraud and just bad lending policy. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. So first of all, fraud has always been a minuscule issue in SBA lending prior to COVID. I think that there are a couple things that listeners should know that are relevant and important. That the majority of fraud that came into the SBA that is often talked about is with the PPP and the EIDL program. But I think people have to be very careful about, I think in Washington language, they call everything fraud. But there's a difference between fraud and bad policy. So if a loan was made to a borrower for a $2 million EIDL loan, and the borrower was a legitimate borrower, and they followed all the rules of the program, and now they can't pay it back, as many can't, that's not fraud. That's bad lending policy. Fraud is if someone showed up a fake ID or fake social security number or got money for business that didn't exist, or got the loan and went to buy a jet or this and that and the other. That's fraud. So to just call it all fraud, I think negates the responsibility or the focus of it. Keep in mind that there were about $250 billion of very large EIDL loans made towards the end of COVID, when COVID was largely over and half the businesses actually did very well during COVID, although the government never realized that. And it was so good to be true. It was 30-year money fixed at 3.75%, and it was lent out with no proof of economic injury. That, in my mind, is bad lending policy.
Was that a change? Is that something that wasn't the case at the beginning of the COVID idle lending?
There's two dynamics of COVID. First of all, the COVID program, the idle program, which has always been designed for like when a tornado or a hurricane or an earthquake like wipes a business off the face of the earth, was never structured to or even think about or comprehend something like COVID. When some of the big hurricanes or storms hit the South, there was a few states they couldn't handle that, but nationally they couldn't handle it. So in the early stages of COVID, they capped the loans at $150,000, and they almost gave them out like candy. And that was probably the right thing to do at the time. Got a lot of money out on the street, and people needed it. And there were roughly during the first Trump administration, there were roughly 3.6 million of those loans made, and the average loan ticket was about $70,000. Now, I have no doubt there's a good amount of fraud in that portfolio and a good amount of people who can't pay it back, didn't even understand the terms of the loans when they got them. Then, when the Biden administration came in, there was roughly $250 billion left in the budget. And I think they wanted to get the money on the street while it was still allocated. And they quickly increased the loan amounts to 500,000 and then shortly after to 2 million without any proof of economic injury. And so really the average loan amounts in the Trump administration were approximately $70,000. And in the Biden administration were approximately $700,000. They 10x them. And literally they handed the money out like cotton candy, or I think I wrote once like a bunch of drunk corporate soldiers, like trying to make sure their budget was used by the end of the year. And get the money before it's too late, get the money before it's too late. And people's balance sheets got flooded. And then they deferred payments for like 2 years. And then suddenly payments were due and people didn't know what to do. So combining that is some fraud and, in my opinion, a lot of bad lending policy.
The other thing we've been hearing about of late, there have been headlines about the SBA, I believe it's the 7A lending program, being in the red for the first time in a while. What was that about?
And Lauren, I don't know if you recall my going down to testify at the House Business Committee maybe 2 years ago. I can't remember, 18 months ago.
I do.
And writing a lot and screaming up and down to stop stripping all the guardrails out of the program, really in an effort to make lending easier for fintechs to do smaller SBA loans. They stripped out so many of the controls of the program.
I think what you wrote about, Ami, was the idea that they were going from forcing business owners to deal with approved lenders, the traditional banks, and opening it up so that non-traditional lenders, the kind of places that'll give you money overnight for a very high interest rate, could make SBA loans.
Correct. All the fintech lenders or, as an example, and I think I shared this story in my testimony that during COVID, once I was asked to be a guest speaker to a Black entrepreneur group, female entrepreneur group for a local church. And my SBA slides never came out. So here's an example. There was a woman there who wanted to do a business where she wanted to start baking desserts for restaurants that didn't sell them. And Lauren, she'd been trying to raise $40,000 or $50,000 for like 2 years, so she could build her own kitchen, so she could start making the desserts to go out to the restaurants. And I said to her, honestly, start making the desserts in your kitchen at home, or Go rent a kitchen at a restaurant for an hour a day and bake there. Why the hell do you need your own kitchen? And she had never thought about that before. In the old way, to get an SBA loan, she would need a full-fledged business plan, thought out, and a ton of work, effort, and sweat and blood to be able to go get that loan for $40,000 or $50,000 if she wanted it. In the new program, they stripped things like business plan requirements and all kinds of things and different guardrails so that the fintech lenders could try to get the loan done within a week. And that's just one example.
Did she get an SBA loan?
I don't know what happened to her in the end. But that's just one example of, from my perspective, why responsible lending takes time, Lauren. Like, if you think about it, in our business here, to get somebody a 10-year SBA loan at 10.25%, which is much higher than it was several years ago, it's several weeks of work. But you get responsible monthly payments and a loan that will afford that borrower the opportunity to live to fight another day and for the debt to work in their favor instead of against their favor. If that borrower might fall for the temptation of one of the online ads that would say, I'll fund you in 24 or 48 hours, and you'd save all that work and aggravation. With the exception that the payments will be so high that it would almost like kill that cash flow. So they're trying to make SBA loans speedy and quick. And in my opinion, they shouldn't be. And we are seeing a dramatic uptick in the rise of early stage defaults, loans made in the last 18 months showing distress. And we are showing a dramatic rise in also the SBA in the Biden administration, they waived a bunch of fees, I think for loans up to $1 million. So there were no fees. And those fees went to fund the program, and they waived all those. Well, those should come back, and many of the guardrails should be back as well.
Are you concerned that this could be used as an excuse to do away with or rein in the lending programs?
No, I think that the lending programs it would be way too politically dangerous. I don't think they're going to do away with the lending programs. Now, might they take the lending programs and move them to the Commerce Department and get rid of a lot of the other programs the SBA does? Maybe. But I don't think they're going to do away with the lending programs.
Got it. What do you think there's, I guess you don't really know, but let me ask it this way. Do you think it would be a loss for small businesses if the lending programs were continued, but the SBA ceased to exist?
I mean, there are lots of interesting programs and initiatives that the SBA does, from training and SCORE and SBDCs and things like that, and support of, and like a lot of the minority programs are gone already, I think. So the other thing we haven't really talked about it at the beginning, but the SBA today administrates the whole EIDL program if there's a natural disaster somewhere. So where that would go, I don't personally think they're going to do away with the SBA. I'd be very surprised.
Has any of this had an impact on your business?
What impacts our business is more like if there's a tax transcript issue and we need help with the IRS to clear it, there are a lot less employees in the IRS today than there were 2 weeks ago.
And you're already seeing the impact of that.
Oh, yeah. Or like we have a loan getting ready to close next week. And for the first time in a long time, we had an error code. I've written about those previously pop up. And it's a legitimate question. Will it take a lot longer to get that resolved now because of less staff? So, and that's an internal SBA issue. So the bigger concern is, will things just slow down? And I do know from talking to friends that morale amongst government employees is down. And frankly, they're nervous, and I understand why.
There's been a lot of talk with all the chaos and uncertainty that a lot of businesses are choosing to hold off on plans to expand or, invest.
Lauren, there's a lot of mean, the other side, I spoke with a friend this morning and maybe this is what Trump wants, and maybe this is a good thing, who has been importing a lot of her products and now wants to quickly move to made in the USA just because of the amount of uncertainty around pricing and costing and freight and stuff getting stuck in customs for products coming from overseas. So the uncertainty is frightening, but if you're a good entrepreneur, you also take the uncertainty and you find opportunities around it.
I think, almost every entrepreneur that is sourcing goods overseas would like to manufacture in the U.S. Many believe that because of the cost of labor or for whatever reason, it's just not feasible. Obviously, the goal is to encourage more manufacturing in the U.S., and that would be great. Do you, from your experience with clients, are you sensing that is this just one that you've talked to, or do you see other examples of people?
That was just one I spoke with this morning. But in principle, look, change is hard. Okay. And this is not easy. And there's no doubt it creates uncertainty and a bunch of confusion. There's no doubt about that. But it's not the first change we'll go through, and my lips to God ears, it won't be the last. So you just have to, from my perspective, keep an even hand and just keep the trains running.
The question I was going to ask you is, given all that uncertainty, there's a lot of talk that businesses are reluctant to take steps, take action. You're kind of on the front lines of that. You see that every day.
We see the opposite, Lauren. We, like, pre-election, we were just struggling, and now we can't keep up.
That was my question. That's what I wanted to hear. So you are not seeing people who are in the process of doing something, pulling back and shutting it down.
No.
That's good news.
To the opposite. If you took a barometer of again, I'm always reluctant to say we are a leading economic indicator because I still think we're living through a Trump bump right now, and I'm not quite sure how long it's going to last. Okay. But we can't keep up right now.
Do you have a sense of how far out that extends? Or is that at every?
I have no idea. See, in financial services, Lauren, if we are a leading indicator, sometimes like moods can just change, right? And for whatever reason, within a few weeks after the election, our business just flipped and went crazy. And I couldn't tell you exactly why. There could be different theories why, because many of the fundamentals problems that businesses were encountering last year are the same. So I'm a little dubious about how long it will continue, but so far we are cracking out loans and people are active and engaged and investing and interested. There's also some bottom buying a little bit. People are trying to take opportunities now to buy businesses cheaper, things like that.
I guess the question I was trying to ask was, are you getting as many initial inquiries right now?
More.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. That's a very good sign.
Now we should do it. We should do a better job at tracking all that data. I mean, it's somewhere, but my own sense is we're getting considerably more.
That's good news. Anything else you think business owners should be aware of at this point?
Just focus on what you can control, friends.
All right.
And that's easier said than done, Lauren, but I always look at it and I go, we survived COVID. We can survive this.
Ami Kassar is founder and CEO of MultiFunding, which helps businesses with their financing needs. Thanks for taking the time, Ami.
My pleasure.
Have a great week, everybody.